Thank you so much, um, Dr. Malinga, and good afternoon, everyone. Um, I am from the program that is headed by Mr. Ditoete, which is International Corporations and Resources. And my role is to leverage funding for the South African NSI, which is the National System of Innovation. And that is a role that I share with my other colleagues in two other different directorates. So I was tasked to speak about the support instruments that the DSI provides for international projects. So I've decided to follow a different approach to the one that I normally use, or that we normally use when we present, just to make sure that we understand what we're talking about. Normally when such presentations come, questions like what, when, how, and so they come. But I thought for this day, maybe let me just try and take you through just three questions, which is what, why, and who. And that who will be talking to the work that we do. So that is the layout of my presentation. You won't see the questions, but I think they will be answered as we move along. When Mr. Ditoe started, he spoke about the decadal plan that is about to be approved, and also Ms. Chubb also spoke about it. And I thought maybe let's just try and bring it into practice and reflect a bit on what the decadal plan says about the support instruments. And say it talks about that we should align international cooperation initiatives with the priorities. So it's something we cannot run away from. It's something that we are forced to do as government, to make sure that we also contribute to the social justice that we speak about for the World Science Forum, but also to leverage funding as part of transformation. We talk about inclusivity and we talk about equality and so forth. So we're looking at that, but also to notice that international mobility, it doesn't happen in a vacuum, but it also remains something that is very important to make sure that our system of innovation is connected to the world. I think one of the speakers said, you cannot do it all by yourself. So you need to collaborate with other people. And also that it also gives access to international collaboration. It gives access to making sure that there is there's a platform for scientists, there's a platform for innovators to talk to each other. So these are some of the reflections that I thought we should reflect to. But most importantly, that us supporting or us providing support instruments to the scientists and innovators, it gives market access. It also makes sure that there is international market as well. So it's not only local market, but also international markets. This is my definition, so you can quote me on that. I don't think I took it from anywhere else. To say what are support instruments? So it's the financial as well as the non-financial support that the DSI offers to the innovators as well as the research community. And why are we doing this? We do this to achieve quite few of many of our objectives as a department. That is, we need to allow for sharing of experiences, best practices. When I rejoined government 8 years ago, I happened to see this word best practice, and I was wondering, why do we always say best practice? But along the years, then I realized, oh well, it's looking at what the other person is doing and trying to forge relations to avoid trying to recreate the wheel. So that's the definition that I got. But also to leverage international funding. when our scientists and innovators are given support instruments, they become mobile, they become known, they become noticed. We also want to influence global governance, to make influence in global governance for us. Dr. Khabi was speaking about what the Northwest University is doing, and those for us are platforms where our flag is flown very high by our scientists and our innovators, but also to facilitate access to markets. There's now this new phrase that I'm beginning to love every day. That's it, science and economic policy interface. We've been talking science diplomacy the whole day, but also we need to notice that there's also economic diplomacy, which is also driven by our sister department of the DTIC, trade development, and competition. So once we have our researchers and innovators with innovations that can be commercialized, we need to create that platform whereby there's interface between the two departments or between the two levels of innovation, where now they'll deal with the trade. So that interface always happen. And the last reason why we're doing this, is not the last, but it's the last of what I have listed, is that we do this to reinforce the foreign policy objectives, being part of the high-level policy discussions, be part of multilateralism, as well as how do we make a positive impact on the African agenda as well as the South cooperation. Now, how do we do this? We do support the national systems through awareness raising. I call this one of the awareness raising and information sharing session, because normally we will sit and we talk about the call. I'm not going to talk about any call today. I'm not going to talk about the call eligibilities and so forth. But I just want to take us to the process to say, why are we doing this? What information is required from us to our scientists, as well as researchers and innovators. So this, as you see, these are call websites. I will urge all of you, and I know the presentations will be shared, to go to each and every call that speak to your area. So we will not be going to the calls, but this is just to create awareness. We do this with the other two directorates time and again. I know this week they were somewhere in PE and so forth, doing call awareness and raising information on what we do. And how do we communicate this? We have information sharing workshops. We have the most famous is the STARP website, which is one of the vehicles that the department uses to promote funding to the South African National System of Innovation, but also to the general government, in terms of how we try and forge the relationship between, or cooperation between, governments. We also, as the DSI, provide advisory as well as technical support. We do have one of the funding programs, which is the Eureka Network, through the project coordinators. We also do have, so this is when you have to, that's why I'm sending you back to the website to say, well, this is how the process works. The ISA staff, they have what they call the help desk. When you get into the ISA staff website, that's where you get information to say, these are the people to contact, and I'll give those at the end of the presentation. We do have an office in Brussels, which is led by our senior science and innovation officer, Ms. Yudima Buza, who are there just to be our eyes, to be our ears, to be our representatives of opportunities that we come and share with our science community. We are also fortunate also to have an office in Tokyo that does the same thing that I mentioned about the office in Brussels. So this is where we also do get advisory. This is also where we get support, and these are very critical for our standing as South Africa, but as well as the Department of Science and Innovation. Also, within our own department, there are a lot of experts, and some of them, most of them, we do go to in terms of advice on the projects that we give to us. I always say to people I interact with, I say, I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer, I work with them. Now, when I say I work with them, that's when we engage our colleagues from different line directorates who helps us make sense of the diplomacy that we want to forge, but saying, well, does this make sense? Do you think we should invest government money on this project? Because all I want to see is to see a lot of projects. I want to see South African flag being flown high, but does it make sense as a business project? Does it make sense as something for our government objectives? And how will this affect our relations with other countries? So we told all those and say, well, these are our line directorates and these are our experts. We also do work with our entities, the CSIR, as well as the Technology Innovation Agency and others. So we try to make sure that we use the expertise, and there are projects from Ms. Mampe's sub-program, from our sub-program, and everyone that are being held and led by colleagues in these entities. So this is how we provide technical as well as advisory to innovators. And one other thing that we also participate in on that we do is to set or to facilitate partner matching services, and we also do offer financial support. And I know the latter is what everyone wants to hear. Hence, I put it at the end of the presentation. So we do participate in brokerage events, business-to-business meetings, where we would take a group of scientists, a group of researchers and innovators to make with their counterparts on the same business area or the same thematic area. We also do offer seed funding for the National System of Innovation participants to finalize their projects. What we always will say, we don't offer seed funding for a researcher to go and look for partners. We take it that you know the area, you know your contacts, you know people you can collaborate with. So the seed funding is for you to finalize with the people we have identified. So just make sure you don't ask for seed funding to say, I need to go somewhere and to look for partners. And with what COVID has taught us was that you can do everything online. We also do offer funding, and I think that's what people also will want to hear about. So we do make co-investment on those projects that are approved. Most projects are approved by a panel of independent evaluators. So, and we also don't give 100% funding. Most of them will end up to 90%, but it's up to the call and how we have agreed with international partners. I mentioned earlier on that I work from within a sub-program called International Resources. So these are the contacts. It's not only myself. We have the Strategic Partnership Directorate, and that's the email address that is from the ISASTAP website that I have mentioned, and that's the director's name there. So these are the portfolio of projects they work with. That's ISASTAP is the overall platform. Then there's projects on mining and material, advanced manufacturing, the biodiversity, Matera on marine technology, as well as the famous Horizon Europe. And that's ourselves, myself and my colleagues on Eureka Network. And there's also development partnerships that also work on World Food Programs. So these are the colleagues that work within the sub-program. So I thought today, let's not go into project, but for you to understand what is the nature of the support instruments that we offer. And this is the last slide to say, let's network, let's have these contacts that we're making here. Let them form the contracts and agreements within us as the society. Because lastly, Program Director, I've noticed something about our national system. There's a lot of competition and there's less collaboration. So the reason I say let's create networks, let's start to collaborate within ourselves so that when we go to these international platforms and consortiums, we have a voice. So this is where I'll end, and to say innovation is the only way to win. Thank you so much.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're running behind time, 10 minutes to be exact. And so I'm going to allow 1 or 2 questions if you've got it. Okay, let's start there. Is there a roving mic? All right, thank you.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm Neville Swade from the Access Program, and I've enjoyed the very extensive and successful work that our colleagues at DSI have done for us in our program and other programs. We're very grateful to them. I guess a couple of things I want to ask about. I understand that the government's job is to facilitate ultimately multilateral and bilateral relationships between governments, and as you pointed out, in accordance with South African foreign policy. So that doesn't really govern the issue of bilaterals between institutions which don't involve government, say university to university or so on and so forth. And one of the problems with that is that we see a lot of science, what I like to call science safaris, where we have people from the north coming to South Africa, ultimately coming to Cape Town and to my alma mater, UCT, and saying that they're helping Africa, which I find particularly annoying. And I guess what I would love to see is to see DSI sort of being the passport control officer about these kinds of relationships to ensure that they meet our needs. Similarly, if a foreign research vessel wants to do research in our EEZ, they've got to get permission from, well, I forget which department, one of the government departments to do so. It's important that we try and organize that, because one of the factors that results is that our research agenda gets driven externally by the interests of those that want to do research here to help us, ostensibly. A little bit cynical, as you can tell, but my issue is really how we should be better organized to invite and engage with those that come to us, that approach us for research collaboration, rather than us bilaterally being associated with them. Thank you.
Right, who would like to take that one for us?
Thank you very much, Neville, for that comment. I think you should come work for the DSI, because that's exactly what we're trying to do, though it's not easy because of the number of research institutions in the country. But ideally, would like all research institutions to touch base with government when they engage with international partners. A lot of partners coming abroad use funding as a carrot. Sometimes they failed elsewhere, and they come to you as a researcher and push an agenda that is contrary sometimes to what we're trying to achieve in government. So where we can, we try to provide guidance, advice, and even foster collaborations with like-minded institutions. And over time, perhaps we can be able to be the passport controller, as you say, but it's not possible with the current staff complement that we have. But through the various strategic instruments that we have, they're not meant for DSI. They're meant for the NSI. We're hoping to get to that stage. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. Let's take one last question, if there's any. I don't see a hand. Maybe let me ask Professor Khabi. You mentioned that we should collaborate with the African diaspora. How could that be promoted?
Okay, thank you. We We have already initiatives on that space that are linked to the UN and UNESCO also in particular, to try and bring together to link up the science initiatives in the country with the colleagues who are outside the country. We also have the Commonwealth of Learning and also the African Universities Association that are also have started that initiative. So they have had platforms where we already try to present what our interests are, and then we're able to get linkages with the colleagues who are outside the country. There's a lot actually of movement that happens from Africa to go out, movement of expertise and yeah. So it's very important that we engage with those networks and those platforms to make sure that whenever we embark on one maybe initiative, for example, even the one for regulating the research within the country, for us to understand how other countries are doing that so that we can come up with better plans. We can engage the diaspora and of course also our neighboring countries. I'm aware of also like the IDRC in Canada, they actually have already grouped countries. Whenever you apply for funding, for research funding, they have categorized countries. There are countries that you do not get access to without getting a research permit or so. So when they send out a call, and they already know that when they get an application from this country, there are possibilities that you're not going to just right away get the work done. You need to already start the process in your country so that you get clearance and then you can proceed. Thank you.
No, thanks very much. Maybe let me ask from the DSI side, is there targeted funding to fund sort of Africa diaspora to Africans in the continent initiatives, or there is no such at the moment?
At the moment, we don't have Dr. Malinga, but we realize it's a resource that we need to tap into. And perhaps the challenge, also in responding to Neville's question, is for research organizations, universities to have international engagement strategies that are based on foreign policy mandate, that are based on the DSI white paper and the decadal plan, so that we're all in alignment. So for an example, those kinds of strategies can speak about what national interest we need to pursue so that we don't deviate from the national mandate. They can speak about governance of international partnerships, what needs to go into governing those kinds of partnerships, funding instruments, but also the kinds of partners that we should draw in, including the diaspora as a resource. So perhaps the challenge is for entities, academic institutions to craft international engagement strategies aligning to the white paper and the decadal plan.
All right. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen. And since there are no further hands, I would like to thank my esteemed panel for their contribution to this session. And we will then move on to the next session. Thank you very much.